Welcome, wanderers of the mind and keepers of the quiet hour. Before we sink into tonight's unsettling revelation, I hope the shadows have been kind to you, wherever in the world you may be listening. Whether you're unwinding after midnight in Berlin, catching your breath in the stillness of a mountain town, or letting the rain lull you to sleep in Seattle, thank you for joining me here, where silence speaks the loudest. If your curiosity leans toward the eerie, the buried, and the forgotten, then you're in the right place. This is DrowsyTeller, where we don't just tell stories, we unearth what was meant to stay hidden. So dim the lights, breathe slow, and prepare yourself. Because tonight's tale comes from deep beneath the waves, a place where no light reaches, and no explanation feels quite enough. Project Nautilus, Declassified File. Former deep-sea engineer, NASA Oceanic Division. Service dates 1957 to 1963. Declassified March 15, 2023. Classification level, redacted entry. Date, September 12, 1957. Location, confidential research site, Point Reyes, California. My name is Dr. Evan Hartley. If you're reading this, then I'm either no longer alive, or the world finally deserves to know why NASA abandoned the ocean in favor of the stars. I'm 39 years old, trained as an oceanographer, and until 6 years ago I believed Earth's deepest mysteries lay somewhere in the cosmos. I was wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. When NASA was founded in July of 1958, the official story was simple. America needed to outpace the Soviets in the race for space. What the public didn't know was that NASA's original mission included deep-sea exploration programs, developed alongside early aeronautics. Long before we dreamed of walking on the moon, we were diving deeper into Earth than any human had ever gone before. I was recruited in late 1957, months before NASA formally existed. The letter came on Yale University stationery, but the signature was unfamiliar. Dr. Marcus Webb, Director of Aquatic Research, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. The offer, triple my salary, an unlimited research budget, and access to submersible tech more advanced than anything the civilian world had ever seen. The condition? Total secrecy. I couldn't tell anyone. Not my wife Sarah, not my peers, not even my mother. The Point Reyes facility looked like any other government lab, weather-beaten buildings dotting the California coastline. But beneath them was something else entirely. A vertical shaft cut 300 feet deep into the bedrock, wide enough to house submersibles the size of office buildings. Dr. Webb greeted me that first day. He was a thin, hollow-eyed man in his 60s, with white hair that seemed prematurely earned. "Welcome to Project Nautilus, Dr. Hartley," he said, leading me through humming steel corridors. "I trust you understand the sensitive nature of our work." "Oceanic mapping," I replied, parroting the vague job description from my recruitment letter. "Deep-sea cartography for national defense." Webb stopped walking, turning toward me. "That's what the paperwork says, yes, but the ocean holds secrets maps could never reveal." He brought me to a high observation deck overlooking the central shaft. Hanging in the void below, suspended by industrial cables, was the most beautiful machine I'd ever seen. A submersible, titanium and steel, spherical and sleek, equipped with cameras, sonar arrays, and mechanical arms. "She can reach depths of 15,000 meters, Webb said, admiring the craft. "Withstand pressure that would collapse a regular submarine like a beer can. We call her the Cousteau, after the explorer. She's taken us places no chart has ever recorded." Over the next few weeks, I learned the truth about Project Nautilus. We weren't just mapping the ocean. We were investigating anomalies. Specifically, non-terrestrial acoustic signals detected by Navy hydrophones in the Pacific's deepest trenches. These aren't whale songs or tectonic vibrations, Webb explained one night. They're patterns, mathematical, rhythmic, and alien. The first signal had been recorded in 1954. A hydrophone near the Mariana Trench captured a low-frequency sound that didn't match anything in marine biology or geology. When they triangulated the source, it came from nearly 11,000 meters deep, beyond where any known life form should exist. He played the recording for me, even filtered through the lab speakers. The sound made my teeth ache. A deep, pulsing lub-dub, lub-dub, like the heartbeat of something titanic at the world's floor. "How many of these recordings are there?" I asked. "Hundreds," he said. "Mariana, Tonga, Kermadec, all between 10 and 15,000 meters deep, and they're getting stronger." Dive log, November 3rd, 1959. Location, Pacific Ocean, 275 nautical miles southwest of Guam depth, 13,247 meters. Our third deep dive began, as usual. Careful prep, system checks, and that familiar drop into the dark. With me were Dr. James Morrison, a marine biologist, and Chief Petty Officer Samuel Torres, on loan from a black-budget Navy program. The Cousteau began its descent at 0800 hours, slipping layer by layer into the abyss. At 1,000 meters, we left sunlight behind. At 5,000, we entered the abyssal zone. No light, no life. At 8,000, we might as well have been on the moon. At 13,000, we found something that had no business being there. "Sonar contact," Torres called out. 200 meters, it's big. Our floodlights pierced the void, and then we saw it. A structure rising from the seafloor like some submerged monument. Not natural, not remotely. Its surface was made of hexagonal tiles, perfectly symmetrical, each about 30 feet across, arranged in patterns too exact for geology. "Are you recording this?" Morrison asked, eyes locked on the viewport. "Everything," I replied, though my hands were trembling. "How large is it?" Torres asked, scanning sonar. "At least 800 meters across, but the depth, it drops another 2,000 meters. As we moved closer, our instruments began to glitch. The pressure at that depth should have been lethal, over 1,300 times what we experience at sea level. But sensors showed pockets of reduced pressure, as if something was counteracting the weight of the ocean itself. "That's impossible," Morrison muttered. "Nothing could survive here, let alone manipulate physics like this." But something had. Then, through the hydrophones, it returned. The pulse. That same rhythmic beat, now vibrating the Cousteau's hull like an immense drum. "It's not the structure," Torres said, confused. "It's coming from beneath it." That's when Morrison broke protocol. He insisted on exiting the sub in one of our prototype deep-diving suits, self-contained, pressurized, built for exactly this scenario. "Just a quick sample," he said. "We need physical proof." I should have stopped him. Should have ordered Torres to abort. But I didn't. Instead, I watched from the cameras as Morrison left the airlock and approached the alien surface. For 20 minutes, everything was fine. He collected fragments, ran scans, logged strange material properties, elements with unstable atomic structures that seemed to shift in real time. Then the pulse stopped. Silence. No sea life, no current, no machinery. Just silence. We saw Morrison standing still, his helmet lights flickering across the structure. "Morrison, report. What's your status?" His reply was barely audible. "It knows we're here." The hexagonal tiles began to glow, not artificial light, but bioluminescence. Soft, pulsing patterns rippled across the surface, like neurons firing. With each pulse, the beat returned. Stronger, deeper. "Morrison, get back, now!" But he didn't move. He stood there, helmet pressed to the panel like he was listening. "Can't you hear it?" he whispered. His voice crackled, distorted. "It's not dead, it's dreaming." Torres was already getting into his suit. "I'm going after him," he shouted. But before Torres could reach the airlock, Morrison started moving again. Not back to us, but along the structure's surface, tracing the glowing patterns like a moth drawn to flame. His motion wasn't normal, too smooth, too effortless, as if the crushing pressure no longer affected him. "Morrison, you're exceeding safe operational limits," I warned. "Return to the submersible immediately." "So beautiful," he replied, his voice distant, almost reverent. "It's been dreaming for so long, dreaming of the surface, dreaming of the sky." The glow intensified. Morrison stopped. Through the sub's cameras, we saw him turn toward the Cousteau, but something was off. His posture, the way he moved. When his helmet lights caught his faceplate, Torres swore. Morrison's eyes were gone. Not damaged, gone. As if they had never existed. Yet somehow, he kept moving with precision, unaffected by the crushing black around him. "It wants to wake up," Morrison said, but this time his voice didn't just come through the comms. It echoed from every direction, as though the ocean itself were speaking. "It's been sleeping so long, but the dreams are getting stronger. Soon it won't need to dream anymore." That's when Torres made the hardest decision of his career. He activated the Cousteau's emergency ascent system, severing Morrison's tether and abandoning him to the deep. As we ascended through 13,000 meters of black, the pulse followed us, fainter but still present. The last image our cameras captured showed Morrison standing motionless among the glowing hexagons, arms stretched wide as though welcoming something invisible. Morrison's body was never recovered. Officially, he died from equipment failure during a routine deep-sea mission. His wife received a folded flag and a letter praising his contributions to science. But for 3 nights after surfacing, I could still hear him whispering in my cabin, "It's not dead, it's dreaming." Termination. Date, February 15th, 1963. Location, Point Reyes Research Facility. The end came without warning, which should have been warning enough. I arrived at the facility that cold February morning to find armed guards at every gate and men in dark suits loading gear into unmarked trucks. Dr. Webb met me at the main entrance, looking gaunt and decades older. "Project Nautilus is terminated. Effective immediately," he said. "All personnel are to report for debriefing and reassignment." "What happened? Another incident?" I asked. He glanced at the suits overseeing equipment removal. "Walk with me, Doctor. Hartley." We left the main building, heading toward the cliffs above the Pacific. A heavy fog blurred the ocean and muffled our steps. 3 days ago, satellite thermal imaging picked up massive heat signatures, Webb said. They were coming from the deepest regions of the Pacific Basin. "Volcanic?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too organized, too deliberate, not natural. 17 trench systems, activated simultaneously, power levels equivalent to nuclear reactors, but using energy principles we don't even begin to understand." He pulled a folder from his coat and handed it to me. Inside were thermal satellite photos. The ocean floor lit up with symmetrical hotspots, like underwater cities illuminated from within. "NASA is diverting all funding to space exploration," Webb continued. "Officially, Oceanic research is being handed off to civilian institutions. Unofficially, he gestured to the trucks. There will be no more official oceanic research. They're covering it up. Space offers hope. The ocean only offers fear. What we found, we're not ready to understand. The debriefing was held in a windowless room, led by men who never gave their names. They confiscated everything: my notebooks, my personal logs, even family photos from my desk. In return, I was given a generous severance, a glowing recommendation letter, and a non-disclosure agreement punishable by federal prison. Dr. Hartley, one of them said, "You served your country with honor. We trust you understand the need for operational silence regarding Project Nautilus." "What about Morrison?" I asked. "What about the others who didn't come back?" "I'm not aware of any such events," the man said flatly. Project Nautilus was a mapping operation. All personnel completed their assignments successfully. I was escorted out the same day. As our car pulled away, I looked back one last time and saw smoke rising from the disposal yard. They were burning everything: documents, images, even the submersibles that had taken us to the edge of the impossible. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from NASA. I'd been offered a prestigious role in their Lunar Surface Analysis Division. High clearance, excellent salary. I declined. 3 months later, I was quietly dismissed from government service. My clearance was revoked, my credentials questioned, and my job applications blacklisted. Dr. Evan Hartley, once a respected explorer of the unknown, became just another unemployed scientist with a mysterious hole in his resume. But I wasn't the only one asking questions. The aftermath doctor, Patricia Vance, our former communications specialist, had been responsible for decoding the acoustic signals. Like me, she'd been debriefed, reassigned, and ultimately dismissed. Unlike me, she had managed to save copies of critical data. We met in a quiet San Francisco coffee shop 6 months after Nautilus was shut down. She looked older, more cautious, but her eyes still held that sharpness I remembered. "I've been thinking about what we found," she said, stirring her coffee. "The patterns, they weren't noise." "What do you mean?" I asked. "They were mathematical. Prime number sequences, Fibonacci spirals, golden ratios, patterns that show up in nature. Whatever's down there, it's not just alive, it's communicating." She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were acoustic data sets, heat maps, even fragments of Morrison's last transmissions. "He didn't just vanish," she whispered. "He was taken." Among the documents were classified reports dated after Nautilus had ended. Patricia had acquired them through a NOAA contact, someone else asking dangerous questions. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a satellite image dated March 1963, 3 weeks after the shutdown. "Every site we recorded, silent. No heat, no activity. Like they'd gone dormant or finished waking up." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Evan, they didn't shut us down because we found nothing. They shut us down because we found exactly what they feared." She was right, but I wouldn't understand how right until much later. Revelation. Date, October 12, 1969. Location, San Francisco Public Library. 6 years of unemployment gave me time to dig. Patricia had died 3 months after our meeting. Official cause, overdose. But Patricia was healthy, mentally stable, and had been obsessively cautious. Her research notes were gone. No signs of forced entry. Her death convinced me. Someone was eliminating ex-Nautilus personnel. I changed my name, paid cash, avoided old contacts. Sarah divorced me 2 years later, said I was paranoid, unstable. She wasn't wrong. But I couldn't stop. The breakthrough came in the microfilm archives. A few surviving contacts from my Yale days helped me obtain partial access to declassified NOAA and NASA records. What I found changed everything. The files were fragmented, redacted, but when assembled, they told a chilling, consistent story. In 1962, 1 year before Nautilus was shut down, an unmanned probe was launched into the trench zones we'd flagged. Its mission: investigate the thermal anomalies we'd discovered. The probe, codenamed Deep I-7, was outfitted with the most advanced imaging and sensor systems available at the time, capable of operating at depths exceeding 15,000 meters. It reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench on September 15, 1962. For 6 hours, it transmitted standard data: water temperature, pressure readings, geological samples. Then, at a depth of 13,247 meters, it encountered something that would alter the course of human history. The final transmission from Deep I-7 lasted only 37 seconds. I found the transcript buried in a subarchive that officially did not exist. Deep I-7. Final transmission date: September 15, 1962. Time: 14:27 and 33 seconds. GMT depth: 13,247 meters static. Control: this is Deep I. I'm seeing... Wait. There's something down here, something massive. Pause. 4 seconds. Control: are you getting this video feed? The entire seafloor is... It's not seafloor. It's a surface, artificial, covered in those same hexagonal patterns we've been tracking. Pause. 7 seconds. Oh God, oh Jesus Christ, control. There's an eye in the ocean floor, and it's looking at me. It's the size of a building, and it's looking. Signal terminated. The file was stamped with a classification I'd never seen before. CFR, classified for religious reasons. Attached to the transcript was a single photograph, grainy, overexposed, but unmistakable. It depicted the ocean floor at extreme depth. At the center of the frame was a circular structure, approximately 200 meters across. Its surface appeared smooth, almost organic, segmented like the iris of a colossal eye. But it wasn't the sheer size that made my hands tremble. It was the unmistakable sense of intelligence emanating from it, an awareness so ancient and vast that it reduced humanity to the level of ants scurrying across something far beyond comprehension. I spent weeks researching the CFR designation, and eventually learned it had been created specifically for discoveries made during Project Nautilus. A Vatican memo, deeply buried, confirmed that in 1962, representatives from major world religions had been consulted about the findings. Their unanimous recommendation was immediate and permanent suppression of all related research. The memo, signed by senior figures from Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, stated plainly, the deep-sea discoveries posed theological threats severe enough to destabilize the foundations of global spiritual belief systems. But the most disturbing discovery came later, when I cross-referenced our sonar maps with historical and mythological records. The locations of our thermal anomalies aligned perfectly with ancient legends of monstrous sea entities. The Mariana Trench aligned with Babylonian accounts of Tiamat, the primordial chaos serpent. The Tonga Trench matched Polynesian stories of Tangaroa's sleeping guardians. The Puerto Rico Trench corresponded with pre-Columbian tales of Sepacti, the earth crocodile said to dwell beneath the world. These weren't poetic metaphors. They were maps. Ancient civilizations had known of these entities and constructed elaborate religions to warn future generations away from disturbing them. The widespread taboos surrounding the ocean's depths, the universal fear of deep, dark water, These weren't superstition. They were instinct, a primal warning embedded in culture, evolved for survival. Other incidents began to appear in the records. In 1847, the British Royal Navy lost contact with HMS Erebus during an Arctic expedition. A classified Admiralty file I uncovered in London described enormous eyes beneath the ice, watching from depths that have no bottom. In 1934, a French bathysphere mission in the Mediterranean reported massive geometric structures before all communication ceased. The crew was never recovered. Local fishermen reported strange lights rising from the deep for months afterward. Even the Titanic disaster bears signs of something far more disturbing than an iceberg. According to survivor testimony omitted from official inquiries, glowing lights were seen beneath the ship moments before impact. A pattern emerged. Humanity had been brushing against these beings for centuries, always retreating, whether by wisdom or luck, before disturbing something better left asleep. Until Project Nautilus. T. March 3, 1973. Location redacted. I decided to go public on a cold Tuesday morning after reading about another deep-sea mystery. A Soviet research vessel had vanished in the Kuril Trench. Its final transmission reported massive bioluminescent activity at maximum depth. The incidents were escalating. Every few months, another dive mission would encounter something inexplicable. The official causes, equipment malfunction, human error, natural disturbance, were no longer believable. They were excuses. I reached out to Dr. William Hartman, a respected marine biologist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. He had previously published work challenging the official explanations for similar anomalies, making him a sympathetic ear. "Dr. Hartley," he said after reviewing my material, "if even half of this is true, it's the most important discovery in human history." "It's all true," I told him. "Every photo, every data stream, every document. I've spent 11 years verifying it." He examined the satellite thermal data with increasing concern. "These readings aren't geological," he murmured. "The power output is far too great. It suggests something alive." "What do you think they are?" I asked. "Entities," Hartman said slowly. "Ancient, intelligent, vast beyond our understanding. I think they've been dormant beneath us for millennia, and our technology, our curiosity, is waking them up." "It gets worse," I told him. "I believe the government has known since at least 1962. They shut down Project Nautilus not because they found nothing, but because they found everything." I showed him the CFR files, the Deep I-7 transcript, the sonar maps. With each piece, he grew paler. "We need to publish this," he said. "The scientific community must know." "I've tried," I told him. "Every journal rejected me without review. No publisher would touch it. Conferences refused my abstracts. It's a coordinated blackout." He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want from me?" "Help me share this. You have credibility, a platform. If they silence you, then we'll know I wasn't paranoid." Hartman agreed. But 3 days later, he called me in terror. "They came," he whispered. "Men in suits, credentials. They took everything. Your files, your data. They threatened to pull my funding if I said anything." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing, but they knew what we'd discussed. They're listening to everything. Calls, mail, probably this conversation too." That was the last time I ever spoke to Dr. Hartman. His future research focused solely on benign marine biology. He never again questioned official narratives. That was when I realized going public through conventional means was impossible. The suppression efforts stretched across academia, government, and media. Anyone who tried to speak would be silenced, discredited, or worse. But I had to try something. I began sending anonymous letters to editors, publishers, TV producers, envelopes containing only the most damning evidence, photos, transcripts, thermal scans. I never signed my name. The response was always the same: no reply, no interest, no follow-up. It was like the entire media infrastructure had been conditioned to ignore anything related to deep-sea anomalies. My final effort came in 1974, when I managed to arrange a meeting with Bob Woodward of the Washington Post. He had just broken the Watergate story and seemed the one man who might listen. We met at a restaurant in Georgetown. I gave him a condensed briefing and handed over the deep I-7 photographs. Woodward was thoughtful, serious. "This is extraordinary," he said. "If these images are real, this cover-up makes Watergate look trivial." They are real. I can provide documents, witnesses, even coordinates where it can all be verified. "So, what do you want me to do with this?" he asked. "Investigate," I told him. "Use your reach. Use your voice. Tell the world what's sleeping beneath us. Use your contacts. Find others connected to these programs. Get them talking." Woodward promised to investigate the story, but I never heard from him again. When I called the Washington Post a month later, his assistant told me he was no longer accepting calls about that ocean thing. I later discovered the paper had been visited by federal agents shortly after our meeting. The official reason: a routine security review related to Woodward's Watergate sources. But the timing was too perfect to be accidental. That's when I understood the true scale of what I was up against. This wasn't just a government cover-up. It was a coordinated global suppression effort involving intelligence agencies, foreign governments, religious leaders, and media outlets. The concealment of the truth about the deep-sea entities had become the most effective and far-reaching conspiracy in human history, and I was utterly alone in fighting it. Date: December 31st, 1979. Location: redacted. This is my final entry in this log. Tomorrow, I vanish. I will destroy the last of my research and disappear completely from public life. The forces aligned against me are now too powerful, too persistent, and far too dangerous for me to continue. But before I go dark, I must leave behind one last warning for whoever may find this. 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by someone claiming to be a former Project Nautilus colleague. He introduced himself as Dr. Richard Kellerman. The name meant nothing to me. I couldn't recall him from any mission. He said he had urgent new information. Despite my instincts, I agreed to meet. We met at a deserted rest stop along Highway 101. He was thin, anxious, in his 50s, and carried the haunted expression of someone who had seen too much of what the ocean hides. "Dr. Hartley," he said as we stepped away from the lot, "I've followed your work for years. What you've discovered is important, but it's incomplete." "What do you mean?" "You think the entities are sleeping, waiting to be awakened by exploration, but they're not asleep. They've been awake for decades. What we encountered in the 1960s wasn't the beginning of their activity," Kellerman said. "It was the end of their patience." He handed me a folder, documents I'd never seen before. According to the reports, classified monitoring stations had been detecting increased activity since 1965. The pulses were intensifying. Thermal emissions had spiked, and now new acoustic signatures had emerged, structured, synchronized, suggesting communication across multiple trench systems. "They're not just waking," he said, "they're coordinating, preparing for something." The most disturbing document was a projection dated 1978. It estimated, based on acceleration trends, that the entities would reach full activation sometime in the early 21st century. "What happens then?" I asked. "We don't know," he replied, "but it likely won't be compatible with human civilization." Kellerman explained that the official stance had shifted from denial to preparation. Behind closed doors, the government had been developing contingency plans for what they called Event Leviathan, the moment when the entities would rise from the ocean floor. Space exploration, Kellerman added, was never just scientific curiosity. It was a backup plan, an evacuation route. They weren't reaching for the stars. They were running from the deep. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because someone outside official channels needs to understand what's coming. Someone needs to know the truth." He left me with the folder and a warning. "End your investigation. They've tolerated you because no one believes you. But if you start gaining traction, if people start listening, they'll stop tolerating you." "Who do you mean by they?" I asked. "Everyone," he said. "Government, military, religious organizations, even the entities." "You think they're monitoring me? You think they can't?" he said. "You think they're bound to the ocean? They're not." 3 days later, I woke up to find my apartment had been entered. Nothing was taken, but everything had been moved, just enough to be wrong. It was a message. "We know where you are. We know what you know. And we can reach you." That same week, the dreams began. Every night I stood on the deck of a ship in pitch-black seas. The water was calm, but beneath the surface I saw light, massive, pulsing geometric shapes, glowing softly in the abyss. Their rhythm matched the pulse we'd first recorded in the Mariana Trench 30 years earlier. And every night I heard Morrison's voice, carried on the wind, tasting of salt, crushing with pressure. "It's not dead, Dr. Hartley," it whispered. "It's dreaming, and now it's dreaming of you." The dreams were so real, so vivid, I began to question if they were dreams at all. Perhaps they had learned how to project themselves into our minds, how to monitor and influence us without leaving the deep. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating regularly, began seeing things beneath the surface of every body of water, pools, bathtubs, even drinking glasses. The ocean was following me inland, and there was nowhere left to hide. That's when I made my final decision, to leave this investigation behind, to disappear completely, but not before leaving this record, for whoever comes next. If you found this log, then know, the entities are real, they are ancient, and they are preparing for something that will change everything. Governments are aware and have been preparing for their emergence for decades. Our sudden obsession with space? It wasn't ambition, it was survival instinct. More than 70% of Earth is ocean. We've explored less than 5% of it, and somewhere in that unexplored blackness, something vast and aware has waited, long before we stood upright on land. They stopped exploring the ocean not because there was nothing left to find, but because they found something we should never have disturbed. And now, it's too late to put it back to sleep. If you're reading this in the 21st century, watch for the signs. Listen for rhythmic pulses in the deep. Pay attention to technical issues during deep-sea mining. Notice when such stories disappear overnight, and if you hear reports of bioluminescent lights rising from trench zones. If you see water boiling from the depths for no reason, then know, the countdown has already begun. The ocean didn't hide monsters. It preserved them. And now, they're ready to reclaim what was always theirs. Dr. Evan Hartley. December 31st, 1979. Final entry. Social media post, Deep Sea Explorer, TikTok user, a Deep Sea Explorer, 1025. Date, June 14th, 2025. Views, 847,300. 92. Caption. Guys, something insane is happening off Guam. The water is literally boiling, and there's this sound. Ocean mystery. Deep sea. Unexplained video shows ocean surface violently churning. Steam rises. In the background, a deep, rhythmic pulse grows louder. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. The video cuts off suddenly. Camera lens cracks without any visible impact. NOAA Press Release. Date: June 15, 2025. Location: Honolulu, HI, for immediate release. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has identified the recent ocean disturbances near Guam as minor underwater volcanic activity. Officials state the phenomena pose no threat to public safety. The rhythmic sounds circulating on social media are consistent with natural geological processes. No cause for concern. NOAA continues to monitor the situation. Text message thread date: June 15, 2025. Contact Sarah Hartley Morrison. User: Sarah, did you see the news about Guam? The water thing? It's exactly what Evan used to talk about. The sounds are the same. Sarah, oh God. What if he was right? What if he was right about everything? Message failed to deliver. Contact unavailable. This number has been disconnected. Internal memo classification level. Black from Director of Operations to all department heads. Date: June 15, 2025. Subject: Event Leviathan, Phase 1 activation. Effective immediately, all personnel are to report to designated deep bunker facilities. Surface operations are suspended until further notice. The entities have achieved critical mass activation. Preliminary projections estimate coordinated emergence within 72 hours. Initiate space evacuation protocols. Protocols are now in effect. Priority personnel will be transferred to orbital stations beginning at 0600 hours. May God help us all. Final entry recovered from Dr. Evan Hartley's abandoned research facility. Date: June 16, 2025. Written in an unknown hand. They found me. After 46 years in hiding, they found me. Not the government, not the military, them. I'm writing this as the water rises around my cabin, though the nearest ocean is over 300 meters away. The water is warm, and it glows with the same hexagonal pattern I first saw in 1959. Morrison was right. It's not dead. It's been dreaming, and now it's awake. The dreams I've had for decades weren't dreams at all. They were memories. Memories of something so ancient it remembers when the ocean was young. It's been watching us, learning, waiting for us to create the technology it needs: space travel, satellites, global communications. We thought we were evolving, advancing as a species, but we were building the tools for our own replacement. The entities don't want to destroy us. They want to absorb us, our knowledge, our creativity, our consciousness. The ocean wasn't their prison. It was their nursery. And now, they're ready to graduate. The water is at my ankles. I can feel it calling, the same way it called to Morrison all those years ago. The pressure should be crushing me, but it's not. Instead, I feel calm, peaceful, like I'm coming home. Now, I understand why they shut down Project Nautilus, not to hide the truth, but to buy us time. Time to develop. Time to evolve. Time to become worthy of joining something larger than ourselves. The ocean is rising. Not just here, but everywhere, flooding coastal cities around the world, even in clear weather. And the water is glowing, bringing them with it. By the time this is read, it'll be too late to stop what's coming. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we've misunderstood it all. Maybe this isn't an invasion. Maybe we're not being replaced, we're being called home. The water is at my chest now. I can see the lights beneath the surface, not hostile, welcoming, like the glow of a distant city. I'm not afraid anymore. After 50 years of running, of hiding, of trying to warn a world that wouldn't listen, I'm ready. To whoever finds this, don't fight them, don't fear them. They've waited for us longer than we've existed. We were never meant to stay on the surface. The abyss was never empty. It was waiting for us to be ready. The water is over my head now, but I can still breathe, I can still see, and I can hear them calling my name. It's time to go home. It's time to go down. It's time to return to the deep. New story begins here. Hello, seekers of hidden truths. Before we descend into tonight's tale, I hope your day has been kind to you, whether it's morning coffee, an afternoon pause, or you're settling in for the night, like so many of our listeners from Tokyo to London, Sao Paulo to Sydney. Welcome to Sleep Theories. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the shadows, the places powerful people don't want us to look. Now, let's travel to the redwoods of Northern California, to a place where ancient trees bear witness to modern horrors. Recovered journal entry classification. Redacted subject, Eli Granger, independent journalist. Date range, July 15th to 18th, 2023. Location, Bohemian Grove, Monte Rio, California. This document was recovered from an encrypted server farm in Iceland. The current whereabouts of the journalist remain unknown. My name is Eli Granger. I'm writing this because I might not live long enough to speak these words aloud. What I saw in the redwoods of Northern California will follow me into the grave, whenever it comes. It started 3 weeks ago, with an email that shouldn't have existed. I was in my cramped Oakland apartment, drinking my third cup of coffee and scrolling through encrypted whistleblower forums. Then my inbox pinged. A message from an untraceable address, just a string of numbers, routed through 7 proxies. No subject, just 4 lines of text and an attachment. You want truth? Go to the redwoods. Bring a black suit and a quiet soul. July 15th to 18. The fire reveals all. The attachment was a high-resolution scan of what appeared to be a Bohemian Grove guest registry. I'd written about the Grove before, based on second-hand sources and grainy photos from the 1980s. But this was different. The names chilled my blood. Former presidents, current senators, military contractors I'd investigated for years, CEOs of tech conglomerates, pharma execs, defense chiefs, media moguls who controlled the narrative of entire nations, all of them scheduled to attend something called the Midsummer Encampment. At the bottom of the scan was a forged access pass. It had my name, Edmund Gray, logistics consultant, Prometheus Industries. A headshot I'd never uploaded, digitally altered to place me in a black suit and tie. Someone with serious resources wanted me inside. The question was, why? I should have deleted the file. Should have gone back to exposing safe corruption, greedy councilmen, and corporate tax scams. Instead, I packed the suit and drove north to Sonoma County. The road to Monte Rio winds through California's most ancient forest. Redwoods so tall they turn noon into dusk. It's the kind of place where you expect yoga retreats and organic farms, not secret cabals shaping world events. I booked a motel in Guerneville, then walked the grove's perimeter. 2,000 acres of private forest, surrounded by chain-link fencing topped with razor wire. Security cameras every 50 feet. Motion sensors in the trees. The main gate was staffed by men in tactical gear, black uniforms, earpieces, the kind of people trained to kill quickly and quietly. Whatever was happening in those woods, they were determined to keep it secret. The forged pass worked flawlessly. The guard scanned it, compared my face to the photo, and waved me through without a word. Either the forger was a genius, or someone wanted me inside. The grove was exactly as the leaked accounts had described. Gigantic redwoods, rustic cabins with names like Owl's Nest, Dragon's Den, and Caveman's Lodge. But something felt off, a wrongness in the air. The other guests weren't just rich, they owned things. Countries, currencies, entire realities. They wore casual clothes, polo shirts, boat shoes, Rolexes, but I caught fragments of their conversations as they passed me on the gravel paths. The Shanghai index will drop 17%. Tell the secretary Operation Nightfall is greenlit for October. Media blackout should hold for 72 hours. I posed as a logistics consultant. It gave me access to Rome, clipboard in hand, camera phone confiscated at the gate, and replaced with a government-issued device that couldn't connect to outside networks. The cover held. Rich men are used to ignoring the people who serve them, but as the day wore on, I began to see the symbols. Owls everywhere, etched into tree trunks, carved into benches, built into facades. Not whimsical owls, angular, staring owls, with eyes that followed you as you walked past. At the heart of the grove was a 40-foot stone statue of an owl, perched on a small island in a man-made lake. Even in daylight it radiated something, ancient and malevolent. Beautiful, isn't it? I turned. A man in his 70s stood beside me. Silver hair, perfect teeth, winter in Palm Beach tan. His pale blue eyes almost colorless. "The Owl of Bohemia," he said, joining me at the water's edge. "Been watching over this place for more than a century. Some say it's just decoration. Others—" He smiled. "No better." "No better how?" I asked, instantly regretting the slip. I was supposed to be invisible. The man's smile widened. "You'll see tonight, Mr. Gray. The cremation of care waits for no man, not even consultants." He walked away before I could reply, leaving me alone with the giant owl and a sinking feeling that my cover was already compromised. That evening, as twilight settled over the grove, the atmosphere changed completely. The casual bonhomie of the day vanished, replaced by something ritualistic, solemn, deliberate, and old. Men emerged from their cabins dressed in long, dark robes. Hoods obscured their faces. Some carried torches, others bore strange ceremonial objects I couldn't identify. In my assigned cabin, I found a robe waiting for me. Pinned to it was a simple note. "Attendance is mandatory. Silence is sacred. The owl sees all." What I witnessed that night will stay with me for the rest of my life. As darkness fell, hundreds of robed figures made their way through the trees toward the lake. The owl's statue loomed in the torchlight like a silent sentinel. Firelight flickered through the forest, casting shadows that danced like spirits. I followed with the others, head down, hood up. The robes smelled faintly of incense, and something else. Something organic and wrong that I couldn't place. We gathered in a natural amphitheater. The owl's stone eyes glowed with reflected flame. A wooden boat waited by the lake's edge. Inside it lay a small, cloth-wrapped figure, eerily childlike in size and shape. At first, I assumed it was an effigy, but as I looked closer, doubt crept in. The proportions were too precise. The way the fabric clung suggested something more solid than straw and sawdust. Then a man stepped onto a platform near the owl. Though his face was hidden, his posture and voice gave him away, a former president, one whose policies had defined a generation. "Brothers of the Grove," he began, voice booming over hidden speakers. "We gather once more beneath the ancient eyes of wisdom to perform the sacred rite that frees us from the burden of care." The crowd responded in eerie unison. "We banish care and cast it to the flames. Care, that pale and common thing that binds the hands of power. Care, that whispers doubt into the ears of decision. Care, that stays the sword of necessary action." The ritual call and response continued for nearly an hour. There were invocations, ancient names from Middle Eastern mythologies. Moloch, the Carthaginian god of child sacrifice. Enlil, the Mesopotamian god of wind and command. Names that had no place in the mouths of American leaders in the 21st century. But it wasn't the paganism or the suggestion of sacrifice that horrified me most. It was the ease with which they did it. Men who commanded empires, who shaped global policy, were here, chanting about the death of compassion, celebrating the erasure of conscience. The ritual reached its climax as the boat was pushed onto the lake. Flames erupted around it. Gas jets, I realized, creating the illusion of supernatural fire. The cloth burned away quickly. What lay beneath, even now, I'm not sure. It might have been an expertly constructed mannequin, rigged with wires and mechanisms that mimicked movement as it burned. The high-pitched cry could have been synthetic or escaping air, but the tears in the eyes of some participants, the open ecstasy on others' faces, it felt real, too real. As the flames died, the robed men began to drift back toward the cabins. I turned to go, but a hand touched my shoulder. "Mr. Gray," said a familiar voice. It was the same older man I'd met earlier, still in ceremonial robes. "You're invited to the inner circle gathering, a rare honor for a consultant." Before I could decline, two more figures appeared beside him. They weren't overtly threatening, but I understood refusal was not an option. They led me away from the main paths into deeper woods. We came to a clearing I hadn't seen before. Around 30 men stood in a ring around a fire pit carved directly into the bedrock. There was no theatricality here, only purpose. This was old, this was serious. At midnight, the ritual began. The men had removed their robes and now wore masks. Polished bone, carved into the faces of owls. The sockets were hollow and unblinking, like death made to watch. They moved with practiced ease. This was not their first performance. The former president stepped into the circle once more, and this time, without his usual aura of command, he seemed smaller, diminished. A servant. "Brothers of the inner grove," he intoned. "We gather to receive the wisdom of the ancient ones and to consecrate the plans that will shape the world's destiny." The response came in a language I didn't immediately recognize. Guttural, rhythmic, cutting past conscious thought and triggering something primal in me. Then my training kicked in. It was Adian, an ancient Mesopotamian tongue believed lost for over 2 millennia, and they were chanting the names of forgotten gods and promising them nations. Symbols were drawn in ash around the fire, precise sigils I recognized from declassified CIA documents. Project MK-Ultra had once experimented with similar iconography and ancient languages to bypass conscious resistance in test subjects. The program had supposedly been shut down in the 1970s. Apparently, it had simply gone underground. The ceremony dragged on for hours. They produced maps, not of countries, but of economic zones, resource deposits, population centers. Plans were spoken aloud in a mix of English and Adian, but the intent was unmistakable. Wars would be instigated, governments dismantled, populations manipulated. And through it all, they did not speak as Americans or even as humans. They called themselves servants, preparing the world for something greater. "The harvest approaches," one masked man said. "The sleepers must awaken. The old seals must be broken." "In the name of those who wait in the deep places," the others replied, "let the work continue." I crouched in the darkness just beyond the firelight, recording everything on a hidden audio device embedded in my shoe. But by then, I understood what I was truly witnessing. This wasn't just a conspiracy, it was a faith, a belief system, a transnational cult with power, wealth, and influence far beyond anything I had imagined. Whether their gods were real or symbolic didn't matter. Their actions, shaped by devotion to something inhuman, would ripple across the world. The ritual concluded with each man drinking from a silver chalice. The liquid shimmered black in the firelight. Some convulsed after swallowing, eyes rolling back, bodies trembling. As dawn approached, they removed their masks. They were exactly who I'd feared. Former presidents, sitting senators, military brass, and corporate giants. They shook hands like businessmen closing a deal. And in a way they were. I returned to my cabin just as first light filtered through the trees. But I knew my cover was wearing thin. Too many looks. Too many smiles that said, "We see you." They were letting me see enough to understand. Just enough to terrify me. But I wasn't done. There was one last place I had to check before I ran. A building marked only as sticks, accessible by code, located at the far end of the grove. I'd noticed it during my initial recon. It didn't appear on any guest maps. The building was nondescript, wooden, cabin-like, blending into the forest. But the security told another story. Biometric scanners, electromagnetic locks, motion sensors capable of detecting heartbeats 50 feet away. Luckily, my anonymous benefactor had thought of everything. Sewn into the lining of my suit was a USB device disguised as a generic thumb drive, containing high-level hacking tools I didn't understand but knew how to use. I plugged it into a hidden port near the doorframe. For a few seconds, the sensors blinked out. The lock disengaged. Whoever wanted me to see what lay inside had planned this infiltration with surgical precision. The interior looked ordinary at first, but a false wall concealed a staircase. Behind it, stone steps, carved into ancient bedrock. Modern lighting had been installed, wiring snaking through centuries-old sconces. At the bottom of the stairs, a heavy oak door opened into a chamber that took my breath away. The room extended far beyond what should have been possible, given the lodge's modest footprint above. Stone shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound journals, rolled documents, and artifacts that appeared to span centuries. At the center of the chamber stood a massive table, carved from a single slab of black stone. Its surface was covered in maps, blueprints, and what looked like government documents stamped with official seals. I started with the journals, selecting one at random from a shelf labeled 1923 to 1945. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, but the contents were anything but quaint. "The European situation proceeds according to plan. Our associates in Berlin understand their role, though they believe themselves to be serving the fatherland rather than the ancient ones. The sacrifice of the lesser peoples will provide the spiritual energy required for the next phase of the great work." Another journal, more recent, read, "Operation Mockingbird exceeds all expectations. Media outlets respond to our guidance without question, believing they serve journalistic integrity while actually reinforcing narratives vital for population control. The sleeping masses accept whatever reality we provide." But it was the documents on the central table that truly shattered my understanding of how the world works. Blueprints for the USA Patriot Act, dated 6 months before September 11, 2001. Battle plans for the invasion of Iraq, complete with fabricated intelligence reports about weapons of mass destruction. Early drafts of social media algorithms, not designed to connect people, but to divide them into controllable factions. And newer files that chilled me. Pandemic response protocols that prioritized control over health. Blueprints for digital currencies that would erase all financial privacy. Population reduction strategies disguised as environmental sustainability. The most disturbing document was a roster of participants, dating back to the 1870s, the founding of the Bohemian Club. The names included titans of the Gilded Age, industrialists and financiers I recognized from history books, but also names that shouldn't have been there. Figures from much earlier periods, centuries earlier. Either the record-keeping was grotesquely inaccurate, or some of these members weren't entirely human. At the bottom of the most recent page was a note, written in fresh ink. E. Granger, journalist, witnessed Inner Circle ceremony July 16, 2023. Asset or liability. Recommend termination if no compliance by dawn, July 18th. They knew exactly who I was. They had known the moment I walked through their gates. The anonymous email, the forged pass, the access codes, it had all been a carefully orchestrated test, and apparently I had failed. Somewhere in the chamber, a motion sensor beeped softly. Red lights began flashing along the stone walls. In the distance, I heard heavy boots descending the stairwell. I grabbed as many documents as I could, stuffing them inside my jacket. There was no alternate exit, only the way I'd come, and it was about to be filled with men who wouldn't ask questions. The footsteps grew louder. Voices echoed down the stairs, clipped, professional, military. Then, suddenly, the lights went out. A moment later, emergency lighting flickered on, dim and red. In that instant of darkness, I heard something impossible. A voice, not through my ears, but inside my mind. Run, little journalist. Run and tell the world what you've seen. But know, the telling will be your doom. And the world's salvation requires far greater sacrifices than one man's life. When the light stabilized, a section of the stone wall had opened, revealing a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the earth. I didn't hesitate. Whether it was one of the ancient ones or something else entirely, it was offering me a chance to escape. I took it. The tunnels beneath the grove were ancient, carved from bedrock and connected to natural cave systems. Phosphorescent moss glowed faintly along the walls, casting just enough light to navigate. The symbols carved into the rock resembled those from the Inner Circle ritual. But these were older, deeper, worn smooth by time. I moved for what felt like hours, guided only by instinct and the fading echoes of pursuit. I could still hear occasional voices, radio crackles, beams of flashlights, but they were growing fainter. Either my pursuers hadn't found the hidden entrance or they didn't want to follow me into the deep. Eventually, the tunnel sloped upward. Fresh air hit my face, tinged with rain and pine. A narrow opening, concealed by vines, led out into the forest, miles away from the main compound. I emerged into a gathering storm. Thunder rumbled overhead. The first drops of rain began to fall. It was the perfect cover for an escape, if I could reach my car before they expanded their search. But I wasn't alone. Figures moved between the trees, silent, fluid. Not tactical teams. Something stranger. They wore the same owl masks from the Inner Circle ritual, but their movements were inhuman, too smooth, too precise. And their eyes glowed, with bioluminescence that had nothing to do with reflected light. "The journalist sees too much," one of them said, voice clear despite the thunder. "The Ancient Ones are displeased," said another, "but the compact must be honored. He was brought here for a purpose. Let him carry the message to the outer world. Let them know what awaits." I ran. Behind me, laughter echoed through the forest. Not pursuit, but something worse. The sound of predators playing with their prey. I reached my rental car just as the downpour began. Rain pounded the windshield as I took back roads, avoiding main highways. In my jacket, the stolen documents burned against my skin. But I had made it out. I had proof. Or so I thought. I uploaded everything to an offshore server in Iceland. Documents, recordings, photos, my notes. Backups were sent through anonymous networks, protected by military-grade encryption. Within 6 hours, every file had been corrupted or erased. My apartment was ransacked while I worked from an internet cafe. Nothing obvious was stolen, but every electronic device I owned was destroyed. Laptop, phone, backup drives, even the camera in my desk drawer. Gone. Mainstream media ignored me. Alternative news sites initially responded, then fell silent. Forum posts vanished within minutes. It was as if the internet itself had been purged. But the worst part was the dreams. Every night since escaping, I've been haunted by visions. The Ancient Ones, vast, tentacled things from beyond dimensions, drifting through collapsing cities. Skies torn open by wind that screams. Oceans black and boiling, swallowing everything. They feed on suffering. They show me futures, ruined worlds, where humanity lives as livestock. And they whisper to me that I'm not a journalist, not a hero, not even a victim. I'm a messenger. They wanted me to see. They chose me to witness, not to warn, but to infect others with despair. Every word I write, every attempt to expose the truth only serves their cause, not resistance, but surrender. They call it the cremation of care. But what they're truly burning is conscience. I'm writing this final entry from a motel room in Reno. I've been driving for 3 days, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. But I know it doesn't matter. They're not hunting me. They don't need to. I'm already doing their work, just by remembering. The ceremony in the grove wasn't an infiltration. It was an initiation. Tonight, I'll drive east, maybe into the desert. Maybe I'll find a way to break their cycle. Or maybe I'll vanish and the truth will die with me. But if you're reading this, if these words somehow escaped their censors, then remember this. They don't fear exposure, they fear hope, and they are killing it, one secret at a time. The fire in the grove never really goes out. It spreads. Silent, invisible, and relentless, burning away everything human until only the shadows remain. And in those shadows, something very old and very hungry is waiting to be born. New story begins here. Hello, night wanderers and seekers of forbidden truths. Before we begin tonight's tale, I hope your day was kind to you. What time is it where you are? Are you in a buzzing city, a sleepy suburb, somewhere off the grid? Wherever you are in this hyper-connected, increasingly disconnected world, welcome to Sleep Theories, the place where we explore the stories that keep us awake long after the lights go out. And if this tale resonates with you, if you enjoy having your reality questioned, stay tuned. At 2 a.m., consider subscribing. We're building a community of those who dare to peek behind the digital curtain. Now, settle in. Tonight's story follows 4 individuals who uncovered something they were never meant to find. The retired military satellite KH-14B had been inactive for more than 3 years. officially decommissioned when budget cuts forced the Pentagon to consolidate its orbital surveillance network. So, when Nova Chen's custom frequency scanner picked up an encrypted data burst routed through the satellite's dormant transponder at 3:47 a.m., she knew someone was tampering with something dangerous. "Lynx, you need to see this," she called out across the converted warehouse that served as their operations center. The place resembled a digital graveyard. Servers humming in stacks, screens casting an eerie blue glow across walls cluttered with network maps and corporate hierarchies linked by red string. "Welcome to the underground." Lynx Rodriguez slid his chair over, steam rising from his fourth cup of coffee. At 32, his face bore the wear of someone who'd seen the inner gears of power. Former NSA turned whistleblower turned ghost. "What's the signature?" "Military-grade encryption," Nova replied, fingers dancing across 3 keyboards. "But it's using deprecated protocols. Whoever sent this wanted it to look obsolete, forgotten." "But the timestamp is fresh," she added. "Someone's using dead satellites to disguise live communications." Jax looked up from their workstation, purple hair catching the screen light. "How fresh?" 15 minutes. The room fell silent, broken only by the quiet hum of cooling fans. Professor Kale stepped out from the makeshift lab in the corner, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. At 58, he was the oldest among them, a disgraced virologist whose career had imploded after asking too many questions about controversial research protocols during the pandemic years. "Did you crack it?" he asked, cautiously approaching. Nova's monitor flooded with cascading code as her decryption routines shredded layer after layer of obfuscation. Almost there. The file materialized on her screen. Project Aegis 2030. "Aegis," Lynx muttered. "That's bad news." He recognized the name, a classified initiative from his NSA tenure. Theoretical population management models. "Theoretical," Nova echoed. "Let's see how theoretical it still is." She opened the file. The document spread across her screen like a digital autopsy. Fragments of code, data tables, implementation phases. As she scanned it, her expression shifted, from curiosity to disbelief to something resembling horror. "Guys," she whispered, "this isn't about surveillance, it's not about control." Jax spun around. "Then what is it?" Nova's hands trembled as she highlighted a cluster of variables. Terms like fertility reduction vectors, genetic selection protocols, and population ceiling enforcement. "It's about extinction," she breathed. "Mass vaccination campaigns, supply chain disruptions, climate-triggered selection zones," she read aloud. Phase 1. Reduce global population to sustainable levels through coordinated biological and environmental interventions. Target timeline, the year 2030. Acceptable retention rate, 6 to 8% of the current population. The silence was suffocating. 6 to 8%, Kaylee repeated, of nearly 8 billion people. "That's not population control," Lynx said grimly, the intelligence training kicking in. "That's genocide, run by spreadsheets." Nova scrolled deeper. "There's more. Listen to this. This initiative represents a fundamental reset of the human species. Traditional mechanisms, war, famine, and disease, have proven inadequate in addressing the escalating resource depletion crisis. Project Aegis is a coordinated response designed to ensure species-level survival through selective reduction." "Species survival?" Jax echoed. "They're describing us like we're livestock." "No," Nova corrected, her voice distant. "Livestock have value. We're weeds." Kale collapsed into a chair, mind racing. He'd worked on enough classified bio-research to know that the line between theory and deployment could be crossed with a single signature. "We need to confirm this," he said finally. "Cross-reference it with known programs, trace the source, get a complete picture." "If this is real," Nova began, "then we've uncovered the greatest crime in human history." Lynx finished. He pulled out his contact list, a web of trusted informants still embedded inside various agencies. "I'll ping my people, see what chatter I can dig up." "I'll trace the biotech references," Jax offered. "These code fragments match biological agents. If they're using pre-existing research, there'll be trails in academic journals." Nova saved the file to their secure server and activated multiple redundancy backups. "Professor," she said, "you're our best chance at understanding the biology. We need you to dissect this." As the group split to their respective tasks, the weight of what they'd found settled over the warehouse like invisible ash. They hadn't just uncovered a secret. They'd stumbled across a blueprint for the end of the world, hidden behind secure protocols and encrypted silence. Outside, the city slept, blissfully unaware that 4 strangers in a warehouse had glimpsed the future. And it looked like a graveyard with Wi-Fi. Nova stared at the file name blinking on her screen. Project Aegis Natwo 30-C. In mythology, Aegis was Zeus's divine shield, protection for gods. But protection for whom and from what? As she dove into the data, a single phrase from the document's summary echoed in her mind. "This isn't about control, it's about resetting the species." And the countdown, she realized, wasn't to some distant apocalypse. It was to tomorrow. New story begins here. 3 sleepless days turned the warehouse into a conspiracy theorist's nightmare. Every wall was papered with timelines, corporate org charts, and algorithmic flows complex enough to drive a forensic accountant insane. Nova hadn't left the building since decrypting the Aegis file. She was running on instant noodles, endless cigarettes bummed from Lynx, and a caffeine-induced drive that bordered on religious. "I found the breadcrumbs," she said, voice hoarse. "The World Population Summit. Cairo, 1994. Publicly, it was a standard UN conference on reproductive rights, but behind closed doors." She pulled up archival documents, transcripts, diplomatic cables, bureaucratic theater. "Now, look at this." A redacted, classified file filled the main screen. Enough text remained visible to tell a different story. Adaptive Earth Framework, Preliminary Implementation Strategies. Kale squinted. "I remember that conference. I was in grad school then, studying population genetics. There were rumors of private sessions, but no one knew what was said," Nova finished. "Except someone did. 17 layers of classification deep, I found this." She highlighted a chilling passage. "Non-essential demographic drift must be mitigated through coordinated intervention. Genetic dead zones present opportunities for targeted resource allocation. Acceptable fallout, 85 to 90% reduction over 2 generations." Jax chimed in. "Nova, check this out. I've been tracing pharmaceutical patents filed between 2018 and 2023. Dozens of them. They're all linked through shell corporations, and all tied to mRNA tech. But these aren't just vaccine patents," Jax added. "They describe genetic modification systems. Dormant, remotely activated, triggers, environmental exposure." "That's impossible," Kale said, color draining from his face. "It was in 2018, Jax replied, "but not anymore. The tech exists, and if the patents are to be believed, it's been deployed." Nova flipped to another Aegis document. "Remember those anomalies you mentioned, Professor? Strange compounds in vaccine trials, no known therapeutic use?" Kale nodded. Control groups weren't behaving as expected. Proteins that didn't match any known immune functions. And when you raised red flags, Nova continued, they called you a conspiracy theorist. Because I asked the wrong questions, he realized. I was looking for immediate outcomes, but if the effects were delayed... Lynx slid over with a stack of old classified memos. Check this, he said. During the pandemic, some rural counties had absurdly high vax rates, places that usually resist any federal program. He unrolled a map. Small farming towns in Montana, Appalachian communities, pockets in rural Iowa. These aren't random, Nova said. They're patterned. They're targeting genetic traits, Coyle whispered. Jax's terminal chimed. Guys, look at this. They broadcast a screen filled with forums, alt health sites, even internal hospital memos. 6 months of anomalies. Unexplained fertility drops. Strange autoimmune responses in adults aged 25 to 45. Birth defects in clusters that don't align with environmental exposure. Migrant agricultural workers, too, Jax said, reporting symptoms that no known illness matches. Nova began drawing lines on their digital display, connecting vaccination sites, demographic data, anomalies. A chilling pattern emerged, a slow-motion biological detonation, one that no one had noticed until now. They weren't just treating viruses, Nova says, echoing Cale's earlier insight. They were treating the future, the human genome itself. Lynx pulls up another classified document, this one from a more recent surveillance operation. There's more. I found references to something called genetic compatibility mapping in Department of Homeland Security briefings. They've been collecting DNA through routine medical procedures and cross-referencing it with... He trails off, eyes frozen on the screen. With what? Nova prompts. Survival probability models, he finishes. They're not just tracking who might survive the selective reduction. They're actively identifying who they want to remove. The warehouse falls into a tense silence as the implications sink in like digital ash. This isn't just conspiracy. They're staring at the implementation phase of humanity's final exam, and most of the class is about to fail. Kale rises slowly, the weight of scientific certainty finally aligning with what his instincts have been screaming. We need the full scope, he says. If they've weaponized the medical system, the agricultural system, the environmental monitoring grid, then they've turned civilization itself into a weapon, Nova finishes grimly. Almost on cue, Jax's monitoring system flashes red. Encrypted traffic spike across the satellite network, mimicking the original Aegis transmission. They're talking again, Nova says, rushing to her decryption terminal. The file downloads in agonizing increments. When it finally opens, it isn't code, it's video. It's a conference recording, Lynx realizes. Meeting minutes. Nova's hand hovers over the play button. Once we watch this, we can't pretend this was just theory. No academic exercise. This is the truth, and it's happening now. She clicks. The screen fills with familiar faces. Newsmakers, billionaires, pharmaceutical executives, scientists, all seated around a virtual table, discussing the end of the world with the tone of a quarterly investor call. In the corner, a digital clock counts down. 18 months, 14 days, 7 hours, 23 minutes. Time is ticking. The video's clarity is unsettling. High-definition resolution, perfect audio, ideal lighting. Almost as if it was meant to be found by someone with the right tools and the wrong questions. Nova adjusts the volume. They recognize nearly half the participants. Tech moguls who testified before Congress, pharma CEOs behind global supply chains, public health officials from documents they've already leaked. But it's the unfamiliar faces that unnerve Nova the most. People without names, whose power operates on levels never seen on a screen. "Audio check," says an off-screen voice. "This session is being archived. All participants verified via biometric confirmation. Proceed with briefing," responds a woman Nova instantly identifies as the director of the World Health Organization. A man in his 60s appears next, distinguished, silver-haired. The nameplate reads, Dr. Harrison Vale, Protein Core Industries. Nova takes mental note. She's never heard of Protein Core, which only proves how effectively they've kept themselves hidden. Phase 3. Implementation is on schedule, Dr. Vale reports. Biometric surveillance is now active in 847 rural zones across 17 countries. Heat mapping, fertility tracking, and genetic sequencing are fully operational. Jax turns from their monitor. Genetic sequencing? You can't do that remotely, unless they've already collected the samples. Kaylee finishes. On screen, Dr. Vale continues. Integration with consumer health devices has exceeded projections. Voluntary data submission via fitness trackers, smartphones, and IoT medical tools now covers 73% of our target demographics in developed nations. Nova's blood runs cold. She stares at the fitness band on her wrist, a holiday gift from her sister. It's been tracking her heart rate, sleep, stress, connected to her phone, synced to the cloud. Penetration into rural areas remains a challenge, Dr. Vale adds, but our partnerships with agri-tech companies have provided alternative collection methods. Genetic material harvested during routine veterinary procedures on livestock has proven surprisingly effective for mapping human DNA. "What the hell does that mean?" Jax whispers. Cale's face goes pale. Cross-species genetic contamination. If they're introducing human markers into livestock and tracking those, they can map human populations through the food chain. "Every burger, every glass of milk, every roast chicken," Nova murmurs, "is a genetic breadcrumb." The conference continues. A younger man appears, late 30s, early 40s. His plate reads, Marcus Chen, Global Agricultural Systems. Nova sees the surname, but feels no kinship, only disgust. "Agricultural vector deployment is ahead of target," he says. mRNA-modified feedstock has been distributed to cattle, poultry, and swine throughout North America and Europe. Dietary exposure now reaches 94% of the population. "Side effects?" the WHO director asks. "Minimal," Marcus replies, "as designed. Fertility rates in test regions have declined 23% year over year. Autoimmune responses remain within expected thresholds." Nova stares at the screen, hands shaking. These aren't theoretical plans. They're reports, progress updates. Lynx leans in. "That voice, I know that voice." A new figure joins the video feed. Their image is blurred, deliberate. Shadowed face, distorted lighting. But the voice cuts through, crisp and calm. "Psychological conditioning remains the most effective deployment vector," says the shadowed figure. "Media saturation has successfully normalized concepts like population reduction, climate-based selection, and voluntary extinction. Social media algorithms are reinforcing despair, anti-natalist sentiment, and hopelessness." "Mental fatigue campaigns?" the WHO director inquires. "Exceeding forecasts, suicide rates in target groups up 34%. Birth rates continue their planned decline. Most critically, resistance to authority is decreasing. Compliance projections are near universal." Jax jumps to their feet, knocking over a chair. They're not just poisoning our bodies, they're poisoning our minds. Nova pauses the video, needing a breath. This isn't biological warfare, she says. It's everything: social, environmental, informational. They've turned every necessity into a weapon. They're not attacking civilization, Lynx mutters. They've made civilization the attack. Kale sinks into a chair. It explains everything. The fertility drops, autoimmune spikes, suicide epidemics. It's all connected, all intentional. Nova presses play again. Phase 4. Preparation is nearly complete, says the shadowed voice. Environmental triggers are in position. Once activated, they will catalyze the latent biological modifications already present in target populations. Estimated time to full activation, 18 months. The WHO director nods. What about resistance? Minimal. Independent researchers have been neutralized, discredited, defunded, or removed. Any accurate reports are quickly absorbed into conspiracy theory narratives and dismissed. Nova grips the edge of her desk. How many others found this trail? How many got close, then disappeared? Dr. Vale, the shadowed figure continues. Status of asset protection? Vale returns to the screen. All essential personnel and their families have received modified treatment protocols. Genetic compatibility with the post-implementation ecosystem has been confirmed. Estimated preserved population, approximately 500,000 globally. 500,000, Jax whispers, out of 7 billion. The video feed degrades, the satellite connection flickering. But one final exchange comes through clearly. Any risk of detection? Unlikely, someone replies. The operation depends on integrated data from multiple systems. Medical, agricultural, technological, psychological. No single agency or team has visibility across all vectors. Except, the WHO director quips darkly, if they were experts in encryption, intelligence, virology, systems architecture, and social engineering. The shadowed figure laughs. The odds of such a team existing, with access and the will to pursue this? Statistically 0. The screen goes black. The warehouse is silent. Nova, Lynx, Jax, and Kale stare at one another across the ruins of their former understanding of the world. Well, Nova says quietly, I guess we're statistically 0, but none of them notice the small red indicator light blinking on Jax's comm system, the one that means someone is watching their network traffic. The light blinking on the comms board confirms what they all fear. It no longer marks a statistical anomaly. The essentially 0 probability team has just become a verified threat, and that means Phase 4 may be starting ahead of schedule. At 4:17 a.m., just 3 hours after reviewing the intercepted conference call, the warehouse's early warning system begins to scream. Sirens wail, red lights flash, and every monitor in the room lights up with alerts. Nova jolts awake at her desk, her face still creased from falling asleep over genetic patent files. Lynx, she yells, adrenaline slicing through exhaustion. We've got company. Lynx rolls out of his sleeping bag and grabs his go bag, laptop already in hand. Years in intelligence have wired him for moments like this. What kind of company? The kind that uses military-grade network penetration tools. Nova snaps, her fingers flying across her keyboard, trying to lock down their compromised systems. Someone's been watching us. Jax rushes in from the back room, hair tangled, eyes razor-sharp. How long have they had access? No idea, Nova replies, fighting a losing battle against the breach. But they're en route, full comms access. They've seen everything. Kale appears, holding a hard drive like a lifeline. I backed up all the biological data to an isolated system. If we lose the servers, we are losing them, Nova confirms, watching files vanish line by line. They're not just infiltrating, they're erasing, sanitizing, scrubbing everything. But even as their digital fortress collapses, Nova's instincts shift from defense to defiance. Years of paranoia have honed her for exactly this moment. Jax, get the mesh network online. Lynx, bring up the satellite uplink. We're going distributed. The warehouse erupts into motion. What looked like a chaotic hacker's den is, in truth, a well-prepared intelligence outpost. Jax's station unfolds into a multi-channel comms array. Lynx unlocks military-grade equipment hidden beneath floor panels. Nova activates backup power and subnetwork nodes built to survive even a direct EMP. "Professor," she calls, "how much of your research is stored offline?" "Everything critical," Kale replies. "After they wrecked my career, I stopped trusting anything in the cloud." While the enemy dismantles their mainframe, the team initiates their last resort protocol. Files stream to secure offshore nodes. Communication pivots to encrypted layers. Hard drives vanish into go bags like relics of a vanishing civilization. But Nova isn't running, not yet. She's tracing the intrusion. Backward. "What are you doing?" Lynx demands, his voice sharp over the wailing alarms. "If they're watching us," Nova growls, "then we're watching them." Her screen floods with raw data, packet traces, path analysis, and bounce logs. The attack is routed through proxies and anonymizers. But Nova understands the secret of sophistication. The more complex something is, the more it leaks. "There," she says, isolating a suspicious stream. "They're not just taking files, they're planting one." The download completes, and with it, a trap. "Child pornography," Lynx reads from the metadata. "They're setting us up." "When law enforcement gets here," Nova finishes, her voice hollow, "we'll be labeled as monsters. No one will ask what we really found." But Nova's trace reveals something else, something more important. The origin of the breach. "It's not some hacker cell, it's Protein Core Industries," she says flatly. Dr. Harrison Vale's company. The ones we watched talk about global extinction. 3 hours ago. "They're coming," Jax says, slamming their laptop shut. "We need to go." But Nova keeps typing, possessed. "Not yet. If they're tracking us in real time, they know we're a threat, which means..." Her monitor pings with a new stream, not malware. Intercepted comms. From inside the Protein Core building. They're holding an emergency meeting. "About us," she patches in the audio. The warehouse fills with tense, familiar voices. "Confirmed," says Dr. Vale. They possess Phase 3 documentation, technical schematics, implementation timelines, and protocol data. "How?" demands the WHO director, her voice brittle. "That data is fragmented across 17 clearance levels." "Unknown, but their methods suggest state-level resources. We may be facing coordinated resistance." A third voice joins, the shadowed figure from the call. But now there's urgency, not arrogance. "Irrelevant. They've seen enough to collapse the whole operation. We need containment immediate." "What kind of containment?" Vale asks. "Total. Kill the team. Destroy the facility. Make it look accidental. Chemical fire. Lab explosion. No evidence. No questions." Nova freezes. Her skin runs cold. "They're going to wipe us out." "How long?" the WHO director asks. "Tactical team en route. Estimated arrival, 20 minutes. Nova bolts into action. "We're blown, 20 minutes. Maybe less." Jax checks their watch. That's not enough time to... It's enough time to do one thing, Nova interrupts. We can't save ourselves, but we can save the truth. She initiates the final protocol, uploading their entire research archive to a decentralized blockchain network. One that can't be deleted. One that no government or corporation can own. The system estimates the upload will take 17 minutes. 3 minutes to spare, Lynx mutters, checking his weapon. Assuming their timeline's honest. Alarms scream again. Perimeter motion sensors flare red. Heat signatures. Vehicles. Black SUVs moving fast. Tactical lights sweep across the walls. Outside, the sound of boots on gravel. Radios buzz in clipped code. They lied, Nova hisses. The team's already here. Through grimy windows, they spot armed operators encircling the building. Upload progress. 32%. Nova turns to her team, her family. Jax, brilliant and fierce, eyes glowing with conviction. Lynx, the hardened protector with a soldier's soul. Kale, the scientist who chose truth over safety. I need 8 minutes, Nova says. Can you give me 8? Lynx slaps a magazine into his rifle. Expression flat and resolute. This is our last stand, he says. We give you 10. Explosions rock the warehouse doors. Flashbangs ignite the air. Concrete trembles beneath their feet. Nova keeps typing. Upload progress, 47%, 52%, 58%. Outside, gunfire erupts. Inside, Jax and Lynx return fire from a barricade made of stacked servers. Kale kneels beside Nova, clutching his backups like sacred texts. How much longer? 3 minutes, Nova yells over the chaos. Bullets slice through steel. Sparks rain down. A tactical unit breaches a window. Jax drops the first one with surgical precision. Upload progress, 73%. 81%. The sirens scream louder, but no one knows if they signal help or cleanup. 88%. 93%. 97%. Nova's fingers don't stop. Her screen flickers, but the upload holds. 100%. Upload complete, the system confirms. Outside, voices shout in code. Inside, silence hangs as the team exchanges a final look. No words, only resolve. They've lit a signal fire in the dark, and now they wait for who sees it. Oregon, never imagining the lessons passed down would one day serve in defense of humanity's future. Upload progress. 81%. Nova, Kale shouts, pointing at the main monitor. They're jamming our satellite link. She looks up just in time to watch the upload speed plummet. The decentralized network is failing. Precision-targeted electromagnetic pulses are crippling their communications array. Years of planning, redundant backups, physical contingencies, all being dismantled in minutes by enemies who clearly understand their infrastructure even better than they do. Switch to hardline, she orders, ripping up floor panels to access emergency cable ports. If the satellites are out, we go terrestrial. Even as she reroutes the connection through underground fiber optics, the screens confirm what they all fear. Their adversaries aren't just armed, they're experts. Equipped with SIGINT tech and cyber warfare tools, this isn't a raid, it's a surgical operation, built to erase. Upload progress, 89%. There, in the network, Nova realizes, watching in horror as data begins to corrupt mid-transfer, they're not jamming us, they're infecting us. Malicious code floods the connection, targeting both local machines and the destination servers. No matter where they try to send the data, destruction follows. Systemic, instantaneous, irrevocable. 90 seconds, Lynx reports, slamming a fresh magazine into his rifle. That's all I've got left to give you. Nova's mind scrambles for alternatives. Local storage, compromised. Cloud servers, hijacked. Peer-to-peer, infected. Every road leads to the same black hole. But one path remains. A path built before all of this. "Jax," she yells. "Emergency radio protocols. Can you reach the ham network?" Jax nods without needing more. Their enemies prepared for digital warfare, but likely not for analog. Ham radio, the original peer-to-peer, immune to malware and modern interference. As Jax assembles the ancient rig, Nova begins compressing their data, converting blueprints, evidence, and research into compact audio packet formats suitable for transmission over shortwave frequencies. Everything they've uncovered — Project Aegis, biological manipulation, population reduction schemes — must survive. Upload progress, 94%. Transmission, corrupted. The last flickers of internet connection vanish as targeted EMPs finish their job. But Jax's ham unit crackles to life, connecting to a ragtag network of amateur operators, preppers, retired engineers, and radio diehards. "This is Emergency Station Alpha, calling CQ Emergency," Jax broadcasts. "We have critical data for relay. Repeat, critical data for immediate relay." Replies echo back, willing hands ready to receive, decode, and share. Nova begins fragmenting transmissions, sending different chunks to different operators with instructions for reassembly. It's primitive, clunky, but it's working. Until the lights die. Emergency power surges on, painting the warehouse in deep red. Outside, through broken windows, figures work the power grid, systematically cutting them off. "They're isolating us," Kale observes. "Power, comms, frequencies. Total blackout." Nova's laptop drops to battery. 10 minutes maximum. She continues firing packets into the radio network, each one a digital lifeboat. "Nova!" Lynx calls, voice tight. "Roof! Movement!" She looks up just in time to see shadows descending from the skylights, black-clad operators with night vision, thermal optics, and lethal precision. 30 seconds until they breach. 30 seconds until Project Aegis becomes nothing but whispers. But Nova has one final move. A nuclear option. Abandoning every principle of digital security, she activates her personal smartphone, something they've never done inside the warehouse, and goes live. "My name is Nova Chen," she says into the camera. Voice clear despite chaos erupting behind her. "If you're watching this, you need to know. Governments and corporations are conspiring to eliminate most of the global population." Gunfire echoes. Viewers climb by the thousands. They call it Project Aegis. Population control through biological alteration. The vaccines, the food supply, the air itself, they've all been compromised. Tactical units breach the building. Lynx falls, blood spreading fast across the concrete. Jax keeps transmitting even as laser dots dance on their chest. "We have 18 months, Nova continues, gripping the phone with blood-stained hands. "If you've been vaccinated, if you eat processed food, if you own smart tech, you're already infected." A rifle butt cracks her skull. She drops. The phone hits the floor, skidding across blood-slick cement, but the live stream continues, now showing boots, muzzle flashes, screaming metal. In 3 minutes, over 50,000 people witness Nova Chen's last broadcast. And in the hyper-connected world of modern information, 50,000 becomes 5 million before sunrise. The last thing her camera sees is a gloved hand picking up the phone. "Sanitize everything," a voice commands. Calm, cold, no evidence. No witnesses. This facility never existed. Then static. Then silence. Then nothing. 6 months later, the official report from the Woodland Fire Department describes it as an industrial tragedy. Improper chemical storage leads to explosion. 4 dead squatters. No foul play. Local media covers it for a day, then it's forgotten. The live stream? Removed within minutes for violating terms of service. Users who shared it were banned or shadow suspended. Within a week, the incident was erased. But the internet never forgets, especially the things someone wants erased. On encrypted boards and hidden forums, fragments of Nova's last words circulate like underground scripture. Pixelated images, broken audio, scattered quotes, passed hand to hand through the dark web by conspiracy researchers and hardened technologists. Truth Seeker 2000. Anyone else remember that warehouse stream? Girl talking about Project Aegis. Can't find it now, but I know I downloaded it. Digital Ghost. Same here, file corrupted. All my Aegis data gone overnight. Red pill reality. But I remember what she said. Vaccines, food chain, genetic mods, 18 months. We were down to 12. Across these shadowed spaces, threads multiply. Ham operators pass fragments of JAX's transmissions. Independent scientists quietly compare notes. At UC Davis, Dr. Sarah Martinez publishes a paper on fertility anomalies in rural communities. She never mentions Aegis, but her graphs match Nova's notes. At MIT, Dr. David Kim highlights novel proteins in vaccine samples. His funding is cut. He's reassigned. Environmental journalist Lisa Chen, no relation, uncovers biometric gear in remote towns. Her article is killed. The magazine's parent company claims editorial integrity. Every silenced paper, every buried study, every deleted tweet becomes another data point in a constellation too consistent to ignore. The whispers grow louder, and the countdown continues. The truth spreads like a virus through the digital underground. 12 months later, Maya Patel is 17 years old. She's never heard of Nova Chen, Lynx Rodriguez, Jax Morrison, or Professor Kale. Living in a small rural village in India, where internet access is scarce and social media is a luxury reserved for city dwellers, she leads a quiet life. But Maya is bright, inquisitive, and determined. She spends 3 days a week in her school's computer lab, studying environmental science, genetic engineering, and the intersection of biology and technology. Her dream is to attend a Western university and help solve the world's agricultural crises. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of old electronics donated to the school, she finds a flash drive wrapped in plastic and sealed with layers of electrical tape, as though someone desperately wanted it preserved. The faded label reads, Population 0, Proof.Vault. Expecting a student's forgotten homework or family photos, Maya plugs it into the lab computer. Instead, she discovers over 800 gigabytes of encrypted files, research documents, intercepted communications, video logs. She finds everything. Genetic modification protocols, pharmaceutical patent trails, crop contamination systems, and psychological manipulation strategies. It's the complete archive of everything Nova Chen's team uncovered about Project Aegis. The encryption is military grade. But Maya is clever and methodical. She spends 3 weeks cracking the code, working through her lunch breaks and staying after school until the janitor forces her to leave. When she finally gains access, it takes another week just to understand what she's reading. Population reduction through coordinated biological intervention, genetic modification systems triggered by environmental conditions, food supply, contamination designed to cause infertility and immune collapse, media campaigns to normalize extinction and suppress resistance. A timeline originally aimed for the year 2030 has been accelerated to 2027. She realizes she is staring at the blueprint for a mass extinction event, and that the final phase is scheduled to begin in 6 months. Maya begins copying the data to multiple storage devices and systematically verifies each claim, cross-referencing patent filings, scientific research, agricultural databases, and environmental tracking systems. Every claim Nova's team made checks out. The evidence is not only real, it's irrefutable, and no one is talking about it. But Maya Patel, raised in a culture where truth and education are sacred, doesn't hesitate. She doesn't doubt herself. She doesn't fear the consequences. She begins uploading everything she can. She floods every platform she can access. WikiLeaks, anonymous drop sites, academic databases, activist networks, medical communities, environmental forums, and social media platforms. She translates core documents into 17 languages, summarizes key findings for general audiences, and provides detailed breakdowns for scientists and policy experts. This time, it's too late to kill the signal. Within hours, her uploads are downloaded thousands of times. Within days, the numbers reach millions. Major news outlets begin covering the story. Politicians demand hearings. International health agencies call emergency meetings. The veil has lifted. Dr. Harrison Vale calls the files a fabrication. The World Health Organization dismisses the communications as taken out of a context. Governments issue blanket denials. But it's too late. There's too much data. The analysis is too thorough. The corroboration is too widespread. Independent researchers from every continent, using different datasets and methods, reach the same conclusion. Project Aegis is real. It's operational, and it's already killed millions. In the past 3 years, global fertility rates have dropped by 34%. Autoimmune diseases have surged 78% in populations who received certain vaccine formulations. Agricultural workers near modified crop zones display genetic mutations linked to engineered bioagents. Suicide and depression rates are at historic highs, especially among the demographics most heavily targeted by media and psychological influence operations. The extinction protocol isn't coming. It's already here. 18 months after the warehouse fell silent, Maya Patel stands before the International Criminal Court in The Hague, testifying in the largest trial in human history. Behind her, screens display graphs of population collapse, fertility data, and gene editing markers. In her hand is the same flash drive she discovered in her school's discarded electronics bin. This device, she tells the court, contains the full archive of Project Aegis, compiled by 4 researchers who gave their lives to expose what was being done to us. She sets it down carefully. Nova Chen was 26 when she was killed for revealing the truth. Lynx Rodriguez was 32 when he died defending her right to speak it. Jax Morrison was 21 when they gave their life to transmit this data to the world. And Professor Kale was 58 when he was murdered for asking questions no one wanted answered. She turns to face the accused. Pharmaceutical CEOs, government officials, and corporate directors, seated behind reinforced glass, awaiting judgment. They died so that we could live, so that humanity would know what was being done to us, so that the people responsible for the greatest genocide in history would face justice. She picks up the flash drive once more. Their names were Nova, Lynx, Jax, and Kale. They saved the human race, and they wanted us to remember this, that the truth is always worth fighting for, no matter how powerful the ones who try to bury it. The courtroom is silent as her testimony ends. In the press gallery, journalists race to publish their stories. In the crowd, families of victims cry softly. And in a small Indian village, Maya's former computer science teacher watches the live feed with tears in his eyes. Sometimes the truth finds a way. Sometimes the good guys win. Sometimes 4 people in a forgotten warehouse can save the world, even after they're gone. Epilogue. The network remembers. 5 years later, the Maya Patel Institute for Digital Truth and Transparency stands tall in New Geneva. Its sleek structure funded by reparations from the corporations that orchestrated Project Aegis, carved above the entrance in stone. The network remembers everything, especially the things someone desperately wanted forgotten. In the lobby hang 4 portraits: Nova Chen, cryptographer and digital warrior; Lynx Rodriguez, intelligence analyst and SHIELD; Jax Morrison, social engineer and technological savant; Professor Kale, virologist and truth seeker. Below them, a simple plaque. They found the code that wasn't meant to be found. Visitors pass through daily, many unaware of the full story behind those names. But the staff know. The researchers fighting for data freedom know. The activists battling corporate surveillance and bioengineering abuses know. And late at night, when the lights are low and servers hum in the background, network monitoring systems sometimes detect anomalies, patterns of code that shouldn't exist, signals with no origin, traffic routed through phantom nodes. Some say it's just digital noise, legacy systems acting up. Others believe it's something more. The digital ghosts of 4 warriors, still uploading, still broadcasting, still fighting to keep the truth alive. In the space between data points, beneath firewalls and forgotten protocols, the network remembers. And sometimes, late at night, it remembers back.